Hello, everyone. Welcome to COEX Talk. We're really happy to have one of a good friends. I met her through Pompitas, which is Maribel. But we want her to tell you a little bit about it. Her name is Paola Fernandez, and we have her here today. So if you can please tell us a little bit about you and what you're going to talk about.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I would like to thank you, girls, and the COEX organization for your continuing efforts in sharing knowledge and creating space. Thank you for taking the time in your busy schedule to organizing all these speakers and these talks. I have been enjoying all of the ones that have been posted so far, and I'm looking forward for the next ones. My name is Paola Sofia Fernandez. I am a designer and an urbanist. I currently work at AbleCity, a architecture planning and city making firm, where I work as a development coordinator and a community engagement specialist. And today I am going to talk about what is urban planning.
Before you start, I just want to ask you, when was it that you became very interested in urban planning and in this field before we talk about it?
Right. No, thank you for asking, Marifer. Some of you might know Marifer and I both went to school at UTSA for architecture, and we were
We're
friends.
sisters.
Yeah, we were roommates and friends since high school, so we're pretty much family. And we both went to architecture school at UTSA. And it was maybe around my second or third year at UTSA at architecture that I realized that my interest was farther from just a single space. And it was more of that, the what connects a space, a building, what was the importance of that connection. And it was because of one professor, Dr. Kamal. I'm still very, she's one of my mentors, and she introduced us to the concept of urban planning and urban design. And she wanted us to design a plaza here in San Antonio. And I was very, very intrigued by it. And I talked to her about it, and she would recommend readings and stuff for me to research. And throughout the rest of my architectural schooling, I still kept that little bug of urbanism and urban planning. So once I graduated, I kept on reading and reading and reading and fully immersing myself in what planning is. So that's why I call myself an urbanist, because I'm just advocate and a self-taught planner. So that's pretty much where I got the interest of urban planning. So I think the easiest way to start is, well, actually, I would like to ask any of you, not Marifer because I know what she is, do any of you know what urban planning is or what an urban designer does?
I do not. I am completely here to be educated fully about this because I'd love to learn a little bit.
Okay, great. Okay. Well, I think the easiest way to start is dissecting the word urban planning. So urban comes from anything that refers to of cities or of towns, and planning just using the word plan. The word plan hints to what is a plan or a guide for the future of our communities. You may have heard of sometimes, or you may have heard of different types for our cities, such as like a comprehensive plan, a capital improvement plan, a community plan, a downtown plan, and even a climate action plan. All of these are plans that create strategies to better the quality of life of our community. All of these prepare us for the future of where people will live, work, and play. I know that all of you guys are in El Paso. El Paso has a very, very good comprehensive plan. It actually won awards at CNU, which is the Congress of New Urbanism. And it was a plan that I think it was done about over 10 years ago, which was the plan, the future of El Paso for the next 30 years. A lot of the development and growth that you guys see in downtown El Paso and in the surrounding and everywhere in El Paso is because of this comprehensive plan, and is following this plan to the future of El Paso. But going back to urban planning has many components. As any city, it comprises of many different things, right? It encompasses housing, transportation and mobility, health, sustainability, economic development, economic resilience, health, and community making. All of these things are what makes urban city. It's more, and as I mentioned when Marifer asked, why am I interested in urban planning? It's because it's not focused on one single element, it's the sum of all of these. So urban planning is the sum of housing, transportation, health, and how all of these work together to create a good quality of life for our cities and our communities. So all of these elements influence how our city grow, how our cities form, jobs, economic development, sustainability, health, wellness, mobility, connectivity, housing types and access to housing, how safe our cities are, community amenities, land use, and even city codes and regulations. These are very important because part of what these plans are, it dictates how, so a city plan, let's say a comprehensive plan, it's a master plan of our city. It's not focused on one area, it's the whole city. So in order for us to visualize or to make that happen, we need to have our city codes or rules or regulations aligned to that strategy. These allow our city growth and development to align to this plan. I have some images here to kind of help you guys understand or kind of visualize, what we're talking about a bit. And let me share with you guys. Can you let me share, Ana Karen? Sorry. But while that happens, a lot of what I talk about are city growth and development. We probably, I don't know if you've heard, but sprawl and growth. And as an example of El Paso has a very different and challenging geographic. El Paso has 3 geographic challenges. It has the southern border to Mexico. It has the border, the mountain, and the freeway. There's only mainly one freeway. So because of those challenges, we can't grow in a more smart or dense way. So El Paso has been growing and sparsing around, which is what we call sprawl. It's going all the way to the edges. So what we see is the more we grow to the outsides, the more we're leaving the downtown or the center part of downtown empty. And what does this create? As you guys will know, in El Paso, there's a lot of traffic issues on I-10, or when they were making some adjustments to I-10, there was a huge traffic. There was a lot of traffic in El Paso, and it was all because we are so dependent on that highway, and everyone's growing, and there's nobody in the middle, so everyone's going through the same funnel. So when we have, yes,
and then another point is not only the traffic, but we're eating up so much land from the urban sprawl that it's affecting directly the environment. And I don't know if you were going to say something about that.
I'm so happy that you mentioned that, because the slide that I was going to share was
I think
exactly
you can share it now.
Okay. No, it's not allowing me to.
I made you the host, so you should be able to let me know.
Okay. I'll continue to. Okay, I'll show images later once we figure out it. That way we don't
waste.
But that's great that you say that, Marifer, because the first image I was going to show is an image of this suburban development right next to agriculture and like open lands of fields. So we're eating up our environment to create this unsustainable development. Whereas we already have pieces of our city that have already been designed and built. Instead of growing up, we keep on growing out. But do you have any other questions while I try to connect this?
I guess I just want to say, I don't know if you were going to talk about this, but one big problem of urban planning and these long term plans is that sometimes they're addressing things in the present and they think that a certain thing will work in the future, and then 10 year passes by and the plan is still in process and the city completely shifts the needs. So that happens a lot here in El Paso. They plan things that they think that people will need, communities will need in the future, and then 5, 10 years later, it doesn't work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have to replan again. And so
Yes.
the process is really slow for the needs, because the needs of people are so quick and so fast changing that sometimes these plans get outdated.
And that's a great point, Marifed. And we see it now, specifically in what we're living with this pandemic. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, cool.
Okay. And we see it now specifically in what we're seeing with COVID is we would have never been prepared in, let's say, in El Paso's comprehensive lab for something like this. So I think we have to be ready to adapt to our changing environment, because as you say, maybe what we planned 10 years ago might not be up to date. So in some cases, a lot of cities will have, after a few years of the plans being developed, they'll have updates to the plan to make sure, okay, we designed this plan for our city 10 years ago, but how it has our city changed? How are all of these impacted to what our city is now and what the need of our community is now? So this is what you were talking about, of taking over our natural resources, or being so this image that I'm showing, it shows suburban sprawl development right next to raw land, close to a lot of vegetation and water masses, and we keep on growing and neglecting all of these rich resources instead of taking advantage of where we have already been developed, right? So an example of good growth or good use retrofitting, what we call retrofitting suburbia, is we already have what we see in the right or left corner. Is this is very typical in US cities. We'll have a big box store with huge parking in the front and a lot of wasted space. If you see in that image, there's a lot of parking that in most cases that's always empty, right? Whereas in the picture in the bottom, you see that it's a little bit more closer to the street. There's a lot more activity. You're really using more of the space than wasting it on parking. So things that would prevent that is city codes or city regulations that would promote this type of development. So what you do is you're creating more of an economic development by creating all of these spaces while also promoting more walkability, connectivity, less use of cars, because you're really using the space in a smart way. The image that we see on the right is what we typically see again in cities in the US, is we'll have a huge residential area that is in all like the squiggly cul-de-sac snake-like types that is not connected. So which means if you live in the farthest house, you have to go through all this way just to get to the main street well connected to the rest. Whereas if you see in the bottom one, it's on a grid pattern. So if there's traffic or an accident in one street, you can just go to the next one and avoid all of that, right? This is what we call connectivity. And then we also see in the bottom one, it's not really well explained, but it's showing all of these different type of uses, mixed uses in one single area. Whereas on the top part, you see a business park, schools, residential. So if you want to do something else other than being in that space, you have to travel so much. So this creates traffic, congestion, pollution, a lot of other negative or not so positive effects, right? So creating a urban or more smart, what we call smarter growth, has more positive repercussions than negative ones. This is another example of suburban sprawl, where we see all of these little cul-de-sacs, low connectivity. And when I mean low connectivity, you see all of these lollipops that are not connecting one area with the other one. You see a separation of spaces. You see houses and then schools, commercial. So you have to travel so long. So if you don't have a car, or if you're a kid, or if you're elderly, you have to depend on having a car. and that again produces a lot of repercussions like traffic and congestion and a lot of emissions in our air. I didn't want to show an example because I know that showing an example of a perfect place doesn't exist. Every example has flaws, or not every example is perfect, right? But something that came to mind was Mueller in Austin. It's a small area where they have residential and all types, house, single use, townhomes, apartments. They have schools, they have open areas, parks, commercial areas, stores, all of what you would need at a close reach, which means that you don't have to travel across town for anything that you might need. Again, I don't say it's perfect because maybe it's not as accessible for one part of the community as to others, but this type of development, if within time we keep exploring it, we can create more accessible housing, accessible opportunities to everyone in our community. This is another example, as I was saying, from Mueller, is that they have different housing types, which means that we're not wasting all of this land on single-use houses, which take a lot of space. We can create different housing types and use what we call the mystic middle, where instead of just housing single-use houses, which is what we would call a typical house for one single family, in the same amount of space, we can fit multiple families or multiple people in one lot. So we're using our space better and not just growing and growing to fit less people in one space. We see apartment complexes, low rise or high rise, like we see right here. So all of these in one single space can create housing opportunities for multiple people, and instead of separating everyone in different areas.
Paola, can you go back? I think I just want to highlight that here in El Paso, I don't think we see the middle image. We barely see the apartment complex type. We don't have a lot. Number one is our leading type of housing.
Right.
So it's a big problem here in this area.
And one thing that I do want to highlight is if you live in a single family house, it doesn't mean that you're wrong or right. It just means that if we design our cities to just have single family housing, we're just growing and growing more without creating other types of housing, right? So it's about creating space developments that have multiple housing types that accommodate Maine. So as you say, Marifer, yeah, you're right. In El Paso, most type of residential areas will just have single family. Maybe you'll see a little bit of low-rise apartments, but if imagine how many people can you fit in that last picture, where maybe 3 or 4 of the single family houses will fit maybe 20 or 15 people. So that would avoid us to grow farther and farther out if we can keep people concentrated, right? Another important element is transportation. We need to, I think that it is important to have what we call complete streets as much as we can, because you're providing multiple modes of transportation. Not all of us have the privilege to own a car, and we keep on designing our cities to be car dependent, which means that everywhere that you go, you have to use a car. Whereas if we design our cities that you can access anywhere with a car, public transportation, walking, or bicycle, it makes a lot of, not only is it sustainable for our environment, but it creates other opportunities. Maybe people that needed to get to a job and didn't have a car can reach other different jobs that they would have never imagined because they were too far or not too accessible. So it's another way of creating equitable and accessible communities or spaces. Another example of transportation uses, and so Marifer mentioned earlier that another component is community and community engagement, and I think we see it more now. Cities and design firms or architects and engineers involving the community more. I think now, because of social media or because we are more invested in our community, we have a lot more participation or input in community members and what we want for our communities. I remember, I think COEX was a huge advocate for the Lost Dog Trail last year. That was an example of community engagement. We were gathering and letting our city representatives know that what we wanted for a community. You wanted to keep the trail because of multiple reasons, and you voiced your public opinion, right? So a lot of these public forums, either is it going to speak to city council, or before anything would happen in a typical urban plan or in any development, you would open the conversation to not only the subject matter experts, whether it's architects, engineers, planners, policymakers. You would also invite the people that would actually use these spaces and tell them, hey, this is what we're planning. What do you think? Will you use it? What do you want? What do you need? How can we make this space equitable and useful for you? And help us design. Some people call it designing in public, which means you're inviting the public to have a voice and to represent that voice into the built environment. I brought some examples here again from Plan El Paso. Plan El Paso, I think it was like a week-long charrette, which is a community engagement event where they invited people from El Paso, from all parts of El Paso. They would have public meetings. They would show pictures of what El Paso looks like. And they would show pictures of what it could look like. Do you like this type of development? Do you like streets to look this way? Do you want businesses that look this way? And it's as simple as saying yes or no, or if you see in the bottom picture, there's stickers where they're red and green, and you would say, I like this one, I don't like this one, and you're voicing your opinion on how you want your community to look like and what do you need directly to the people that are designing it. I think it's more than just inviting them, and in most cases, some people just take community engagement as a checkbox that they have to follow or they have to do, and just put that opinion and shove it in a drawer. But now more than ever, I think we have to listen to what our community wants and needs, because at the end of the day, the expert in the community is not a designer that doesn't even live in that city, is a community member that lives there, that advocates for that community. So their voice is the most important because they're the experts in that community. So having community engagement events or meetings is not just to check a box, but it's really the most important feedback in a project.
Yeah.
As you see in these examples here, you see a lot of maps, a lot of pictures, and it's because we're showing the community, this is the area that you're impacting. This is what we want to do. Tell us what we need.
Yeah, and I'm gonna jump into the example of Lost Dog Trail. It's very important that sometimes we think that we're going to be heard because we're a community and we go there and our representatives don't do it. And I think as citizens, we need to really make sure that we're paying attention to who we vote for and who's representing us, and making sure that we're contacting them, talking to them, knowing who they are, because at the end of the day, they might not represent you the best possible way. It happens a lot. It happens here in El Paso, and it's frustrating.
And you're right. I think part of the planning process is that it's, even though it's design and there's still policy involved, and people that get to approve or deny or help in the policy process are people, are city leaders. So it is not only because we're in an election year, but it is always important to vote for people that really represent your needs and are really concerned about your community necessities. So yes, as you were saying, having community leaders that advocate for this, for your community and for the same thing that you are, is very important. And for them to be in that place, you have to vote for them. So yes, at the end of the day, there is some politics involved in planning, because there is policy, because the plan can't be, for a plan to become or be implemented, it has to go through policy. So you're right, Marifred. I wanted to say something else. I think that I remember now. We think that development or any type of design can only come from our government or from designers. But you as a citizen can demand what you want. An example that we've seen all over the world is, I don't know if you've seen or heard of open streets. A lot of places in the US have closed streets and opened them for bicyclists or runners and created trails out of our streets. I'm part of the group here in San Antonio that is and has been doing that. So as community members, and there were from designers to architects to policymakers to analysts, public health um, experts gathered together and said, hey, we're all in this pandemic. We need to exercise. We need to have outside and recreational spaces, but we're all crowding our trails and our parks, and it's not safe to socially distance. How can we create another space that is allowing us to go outside and be recreative while in spaces that we're not using? So we put together a plan where were identified parts of the city where we wanted to close some streets only for cyclists and runners and walkers and dogs and all of these like recreational activities, and submitted it to council and to the mayor and said, hey, we as a community wrote this plan. Please look at, we have a lot of people that are going to advocate for it. And they did. They took it, they read it, and they said, okay, let's do a pilot program. And now it is in action, and it is a plan that was community led. So one of the things that I really wanted to get through is all of these plans that make our city are not led by city leaders or designers or architects or engineers. You as a community member can gather other advocates and say, hey, we as a community want this, and go straight to your policymakers and tell them we want this. And you'll be surprised, and you will be able to create changes in your built environment as a community member. But yeah, I think that is all I have. I do have, as Marifer knows, I love to read and I love to give the books to my friends. I think one of the best gifts that we can do is share knowledge. Yes. So if you are more interested in this subject, I put together a list of books of urban planning, community engagement, anything. So please feel free to read any of these books.
Oh, I love this.
I think sharing knowledge and sharing books is the best thing that we can do, and specifically now that we're in our house, we're stranded.
Oh, hold on. I gotta show you something.
Yes, I love that book.
You have this one there.
Yeah, that's a great read.
Thank you so much, Tia.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
I really wanted to touch on this because we're focusing a lot on education, especially with sustainability, but we must learn the basics, and what's like looking at different scales is important, not only in a personal level, but understanding that there's a collective, and how the collective works is the way we can make change. So we really appreciate having you here, and hopefully you can join us again with another topic, because I know you know everything.
No, thank you. As I said at the beginning, thank you guys for having me on, but most importantly, for creating this space. I think that one, it is so powerful that a group of Latinas are leading this and creating this space for more people. It is very important now to be informed, but more than anything, to have the vulnerability to accept new information and be okay to changing your opinion or just absorbing information. I think that you guys creating this space is very, very powerful, and I'm so grateful for you guys and your efforts.
No, and sorry that I was so quiet, but I literally didn't know a lot, so I've been doing a lot of notes. I just wanted to prove that I was. But yeah, thank you so much. I mentioned, I've always wanted to learn a little bit more about this, so it was a lot of information to take in, and I did really want to make some notes on that respect. So I'm definitely getting a book.
We're really, before we leave, we're really happy that you're doing this, because we need young people doing the changes that our cities need. It's super important.
No, and I think if I could say one more thing, one thing that I will share from the place where I work is a phrase that I really like a lot. We're an architecture, urbanism, and city making firm. city making is what we call our community engagement arm. And I think one thing that I think is very powerful is that they focus on making community members city makers, just telling them that you, if you have something that you're passionate or you feel strongly about, you can for sure find someone else who feels the same way and change the way your city works or grows and become a city maker yourself. So if anything, if you can learn anything over the last 20 something minutes is that you have the power to change how your city looks, grows, and feels because just because of the passion that you feel and the love that you have for your community.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for being with us.
We love you.
It. We love it. And definitely we would love to have you another time. And if you can talk about something where we can inform and educate everyone else, we would love that. Because we love you.
No.
So yeah.
We love you.
No, thank you guys. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.